I've always been fascinated by the concept and the movies that take place in like a post um, apocalyptic setting where something catastrophic has happened in the world, and because of that everything in the way we know life has changed. So there's this movie called The Book of Eli, and in the Book of Eli there's this guy named Eli. He's this mysterious figure, and he's walking across the surface of the earth after some kind of catastrophic thing has taken place. And there's this curious thing about Eli, and as we watch the movie play out, we realize that Eli is in possession of the last Bible on the face of the planet. And there's this huge struggle over the fact that Eli has this book because people in powerful positions have worked to destroy every Bible on the face of the planet. When I was in college, a friend of mine had been involved with smuggling Bibles into China, and he would tell me stories about these super thrilling experiences he had smuggling Bibles into China. And recently I was online on Facebook, and I saw a video of Bibles being distributed in China, in a part of the world where Bibles were not permitted. And these Christians were flocking to the Bible. They were chasing this suitcase, like coming down on this suitcase and just grasping Bibles, holding them like they were their entire life. And in this video, what struck me was how much these people valued God's Word. What struck me was how much God's Word was life to them. God's Word was more important than life. And they wanted to have God's Word and to look at God's Word and to absorb God's Word in their life personally. And I think in Western civilization, in the United States today, Bibles are everywhere. They're handed out on the street. There are apps, free apps all over, and we tend to not take God's Word for what it is. But I love these pictures of valuing God's Word. And I think there's a story in the book of 2 Kings where Josiah, one of the few righteous, godly kings mentioned in the history of Israel, he is rebuilding God's temple because he has a passion to honor God with his life and with his kingship. And in doing that, his workers come upon the book of the law, which is essentially their Bible at that time. And Josiah has some men read this book of the law, and they realize that they're doing so many things wrong according to the book of the law. And they tear, Josiah, God's word says that Josiah tears his clothes when he hears about how him and his people are rebelling against God's law. We have lots of reasons today not to read God's word. It takes intentionality, it takes time. Sometimes God's word is hard to understand, and we have to use application to open it up and to really figure out what's going on. And yet, I think God's word is an incredible blessing to our life, and so often we push it away. Paul, in the 2 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul wrote that if there's glory in the ministry of condemnation, so if God is glorified simply by condemning people, which he is. We know that by God's word. But Paul says if there's glory in that ministry, then the ministry of righteousness must far exceed that glory. That the ministry of becoming whole again through Jesus Christ must far exceed the glory of condemnation. God is most glorified in us when we are walking in righteousness with him. But in order to walk in righteousness with God, we have to be getting in God's word. And we can so easily not value God's word in our life. We can so easily be flippant about God's word. We can so easily just find it to be too accessible. There's just too many places around me where I can get it, and because of that, it's not valuable. But there are places on the planet right now that don't even have a Bible in their language. There are people in the world right now who cannot legally buy a Bible. And I think one of the greatest keys in my life to living in wholeness and purity has been a regular discipline of getting in God's word. It's been a regular discipline of getting before the Lord and not simply reading kind of like wherever I feel like reading, but actually sitting down and reading a book of the Bible, trying to think about the context of that book, trying to think about what that book is really trying to say, not what my interpretation of it is, but what God is trying to speak to me through this book. And I want to challenge you guys, if you guys have not started a regular discipline, or maybe you've gotten off track in your discipline of reading God's Word, I want to challenge you to get back into God's Word. One of my favorite places to read in the Bible are Paul's epistles. So stuff like 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Ephesians, Galatians, Colossians, Philemon, stuff like that. I want to challenge you, if you haven't been in a routine lately of getting in God's Word, crack open some of these epistles, get into them, think about them. Maybe some days you're only going to read 4 or 5 verses because it's really going to be hitting you. Maybe some days you're going to read 3 chapters because you can kind of just go through it and you're saying, like, God, I need you to stop me somewhere, and you're not seeing it. Whatever it is, get into God's Word. It is so valuable for us as men to be men of God's Word, and I want to challenge you with that this week.